In this training, we'll learn about the trauma-informed care approach to services, including what trauma is, how it affects us, and how we can better provide services to our clients who have experienced trauma. Most of us experience trauma in our lives, and we all have different responses to those experiences. Some of us are barely fazed by it, while others are severely impacted to the point of disability. Trauma-informed care is an approach that takes these experiences into account when planning service delivery. It focuses on how trauma may affect an individual's life and how they might respond to our services and interventions. There are three key elements to a trauma-informed care approach to service delivery. The first is realizing the prevalence of trauma, that is, how common trauma is to the human experience. Next, we must recognize the effects of trauma on those we serve, as well as on ourselves. Now, equipped with this knowledge and awareness, we can respond by providing services that are sensitive to trauma survivors and supportive of their needs. To broadly define trauma, we can say that it's a psychological, physical, and emotional response to an event or experience that is deeply distressing or disturbing. Trauma exists on a continuum or a range. A trauma response can be triggered from something relatively minor and upsetting to something extremely disturbing and damaging. Each person's response to a traumatic event is different. Everyone processes trauma in their own way through the lens of their prior life experiences. This means that two individuals experiencing the exact same traumatic event can have very different psychological, physical, and emotional responses. Trauma is one of the most common human experiences. It's estimated that 70% of American adults have experienced trauma in their lives. This rate is much higher in at-risk and vulnerable populations. Individuals experiencing homelessness, as well as service members and veterans, have higher rates of trauma experience, with some estimates nearing 95%. At ABCCM, most of the individuals we serve fall into these at-risk populations, and therefore are more likely to have experienced trauma in their lives. Now that we know how common trauma can be, let's look at some of the possible effects of trauma. Someone who's experienced trauma in their lives may relate to others differently. They may have difficulty trusting others or entering into close relationships. Trauma can distort how we experience love and fear and affect the social strategies we use to meet our basic needs of love and belonging. Trauma can also alter our emotional state and change how we experience and express our feelings. It can cause us to become hypervigilant and anxious in certain situations. Emotional regulation becomes more challenging for some trauma survivors, leading to a feeling of being out of control. Trauma's effect on our brains can lead to difficulty concentrating and slower thinking. This, in turn, can make decision-making more challenging. Trauma can have an impact on our bodies as well, causing physical pain, discomfort, and fatigue. These emotional and physical effects can cause us to become irritable, irrational, and even compulsive. This may contribute to dangerous and risky behavior, including substance abuse. Trauma alters the way we see ourselves and others. It can shake previously held beliefs and shift our view of the world and our place in it. While trauma can impact many different parts of us, each of these parts are connected. We are the sum of these parts, mind, body, and spirit, all interconnected like a web. Now imagine trying to meet your basic human needs through this web of disturbance caused by trauma. This is the reality for many of the individuals we serve, and why it's so important that we seek to better understand the effects of trauma and how we can be more sensitive and supportive to our neighbors in need. In every interaction with a trauma survivor, we have a choice. We can add to their trauma experience and reactivate traumatic memories, or we can provide a sense of safety and support, a place to help them heal. All of our services should be infused with positive intention and a general awareness of the trauma our clients may have experienced. Positive interactions that communicate safety and connection are the bedrock of providing a trauma-informed experience to our clients. In the next few moments, we'll look at ways to apply trauma-informed care principles to our programs and services. These principles are safety, trustworthiness, peer support, collaboration or mutuality, empowerment, and awareness of cultural and historical issues. Safety is one of our most basic human needs. Creating a welcoming and safe physical environment is essential in serving individuals who have experienced trauma. Take a look around where you meet and provide services to clients. What does the space look like? Is it comfortable? You should avoid spaces that are cluttered or small and confining. These spaces can increase one's feelings of anxiety and discomfort, making it more difficult to focus on the services being provided. Think carefully about where and when services are provided. Be considerate of the physical needs and preferences of your clients. What kind of space would you feel comfortable and safe in? Think about who is present in the space and who is permitted to be there. Are people walking in and out of the room? Are there other conversations taking place? Or is the space quiet and conducive to the types of services you're providing? In asking these questions, you're beginning to think about the physical experience in the space and the physical needs of the clients you're serving. Next, let's consider the emotional safety of the environment. Is it welcoming? Are you, as a professional, maintaining clear and consistent boundaries? Remember that trauma can affect the way someone approaches relationships. A space where roles are not clearly defined may induce feelings of confusion. Be sure to clearly identify who you are and what your role is. Your initial intake process should focus more on the client's strengths and potential solutions rather than spending too much time on the problem. Sure, you'll want to find out what the problem is and what caused it, but avoid having them retell their story more than necessary. Spending too much time and energy in this negative space runs the risk of re-traumatizing the person by having them recount the details of their experience. Safety and transparency work together to build trust with clients. Make sure the client knows what services will be provided and how they'll be provided, including hours of operation and location of service sites. Don't create a space where the client is left guessing. Knowing what's next helps us to prepare for it and can put us at ease. This is no different for the clients we serve. Clearly communicate next steps to the client and take the time to answer any questions they may have. Don't expect the clients to understand or retain everything you say the first time. This may mean repeating information, and that's okay. Don't assume that because they're here for services, that they've given you permission to do anything to help them. Be sure to obtain their consent for services and ask permission along the way. For example, I'd like to make a call to your landlord to discuss your past due rent. Would that be okay with you? Peer support is growing in the human services field, and has proven to be a highly effective way to provide services and improve outcomes. Peer support is a way for people from diverse backgrounds who share experiences in common to come together to build relationships in which they can share their strengths and support each other's healing and growth. As you explore ways to provide more trauma-informed services, think of how you might incorporate peer support in your service delivery. It could be as simple as linking clients to peer meetings like AA, or hiring a peer support specialist at your site. Collaboration, or mutuality, is an important concept for both the client and the service provider to fully grasp. You are not alone in this. You are in this together. You, as the service provider, aren't responsible for fixing the client's problem, and the client doesn't have to figure it out on their own. Together, you and the client set a goal both of you agree to and develop a plan for how best to achieve that goal. Focus on what you have, not on what you're missing. Together, you have more than you think. By focusing on strengths and the resources available to you, you're shifting your thinking toward solutions and away from the trauma of the problem. It's important for the service provider and the client to separate the person from the problem. Don't think of your client as homeless. Think of them as experiencing homelessness. Don't think of your client as an addict. Think of them as a person in addiction. They're separate. They're fully autonomous and capable, just like you. Often, traumatic experiences can rob a person of their feelings of control and power. In trauma-informed services, we have a responsibility to help restore that lost power to our clients. We can do this by advocating for our clients to get them what they need and deserve to move forward with their lives and be successful in our services. We should provide them with as many opportunities as possible to make informed choices about their care and services, and to respect and honor the choices they've made. Our services should not focus on a short-term bailout, but on a long-term solution involving new skills and strategies that they can use for the rest of their lives. Our focus should be on their long-term success, not just getting past the current crisis. Trauma can be linked to culture, historical events, war, targeted violence, and being part of a marginalized or minority group. It's our responsibility to be aware of these factors, to inform ourselves on them, and to be sensitive to them. Let's review what we've learned. In trauma-informed care, we realize that trauma is common, especially in high-risk populations. We recognize that trauma can impact every part of us, body, mind, and spirit, and can affect every aspect of our lives. In trauma-informed care, we respond in a way that promotes healing and doesn't cause further harm. We can do this by keeping in mind the 6 key principles of trauma-informed care: safety, trustworthiness and transparency, peer support, collaboration or mutuality, empowerment by restoring our client's voice and honoring their choice, and being aware and sensitive to cultural and historical factors in trauma. As we conclude this training, let's take the next few moments to hear from Veterans Affairs leaders on their thoughts about trauma-informed care.
The Grant Per Diem program recognizes that many of our veterans who are homeless, who have been entering transitional housing, have had traumatic experiences, either in the military, during their military service, having observed trauma themselves, or experienced trauma while living on the streets. As a result of this, we've been promoting trauma-informed care, which we're looking at really basically ensuring that the environments in which veterans are living in when they come into our transitional housing programs are welcoming and safe. This is important for our veterans who are participating in our programs, as it will allow them to more fully participate in services and thus achieve their housing goals. Creating environments in which veterans feel safe will also allow them the opportunity to be more likely to participate in evidence-based services which are being provided in a variety of VHA homeless programs.
Trauma-informed care is an approach to services that creates an emotional and physical welcoming environment for veterans, especially for veterans that are homeless or have been disadvantaged, with the recognition that they are at increased risk for having witnessed or been victims of trauma, either through being homeless or through their time in the military. So we're working with all of our clinicians to help them better understand the principles of trauma-informed care, as well as to be better educated and more comfortable with enacting the principles when they're working with veterans, to help build their trust and really help the veterans address their needs as they see them.
What we've found is that very often the homeless veterans that we encounter through all of our different programs in the Homeless Program Office have had an experience of some type of trauma, whether it's from the experience they had within their experience in the military, or just as a result of being homeless. I mean, being homeless by itself is, you could make the case that that is trauma for people to experience. And what we're really looking to do with the programs that we offer, the contracted housing programs in particular, is to try to make sure that the environment that we provide for these veterans who are coming into our care is one that is welcoming and is understanding of the experiences that they've had, and the environment itself is shaped to accept that type of experience and incorporate that in how we lower barriers, that we make our environments, again, in these programs more comfortable, more accepting, and really able to provide a safe environment and a stable environment for the veterans that we're looking to serve.
One of the challenges for SSVF providers as they work with families is that the families that they work with often contain dependent children, young children. So we have about 45% of all the households served by SSVF have dependent children. One of the things we know from research, of course, is that the impact of homelessness is a traumatic effect, and it's particularly so on children. One of the things our providers need to be attentive to is the fact that these children, as well as the rest of the family members, need to be brought in a sensitive, strength-based approach where their needs are attended to and they're supported and they feel safe in those environments. Similarly, parents are traumatized not only by their own homelessness, but to watch their own children experience this as well. This compounds the impact on mental health needs and on other needs that these veterans may perceive because of witnessing what happens to their children. It is very important that providers understand and think of yourself as if you are in fact a parent, how you might experience such a situation and how you might want to be treated yourself if you came in for services. Non-judgmental, supportive services are at the forefront of any approach that begins to engage these veterans and their families.